Hello, everyone. Today we have a special guest coming from LA. His name is Yennie. Welcome.
Hi. I'm actually coming from San Francisco.
Here we go.
But yeah, thank you for having me.
Do you want to talk about what do you do?
Yeah, I'm a producer's rep, author, and entrepreneur working primarily at the intersection of film and technology with a lot of backing in finance and distribution.
Okay. Let's talk about distribution. Let's say that I'm a filmmaker and maybe even a producer, and I have a picture lock. What is next?
If you have picture lock, you might want to contact a producer's rep. If you want to forego getting a producer's rep, you might want to show it to beta viewers just to get feedback on your cut to make sure that you really are at picture lock, because a lot of people assume they're at picture lock before they really are. Like, if there's a rule of thumb that I have for films that are represented to me, or excuse me, that are submitted to me for representation, that if the writer also directed the film is generally 20 minutes too long. So
Oh, wow.
that is, and if that person also edited, the film is often 40 minutes too long, and there's a lot they can cut back. So I'd say just because you think you're at picture lock doesn't necessarily mean you are. And once you think you're at picture lock is a good point to start showing it to people who can give you feedback before you go through the more expensive parts of post, like color and sound. So.
Okay. What is the process for a filmmaker? How can a filmmaker say, all right, I want to work with you? How is the process?
With me?
Or with any other sales agent?
Well, I'm somewhere
rep.
between a sales agent and a producer. So it's generally safer to contact someone like me earlier than you would contact a sales agent.
Okay.
If you contact a sales agent will only ever watch a film once. And if you contact them before it's colored and everything's ready to sell, there's a very good chance they're just going to turn you down and never watch your film again, even if it gets better. So you don't necessarily want to burn a lead, but you do want to, but at some point you're probably going to need feedback and figure out what direction you want to go. So that's why you should either start talking to beta viewers who can be your friends or other filmmakers just to get feedback on your cut and figure out maybe there's one storyline you should tighten or remove entirely before you start going through color, because generally independent films are more likely to be too long than too short. So you should be thinking about where you can cut to keep it punchy and interesting.
Okay. And how much does it charge a sales rep and also a sales agent?
So a producer's rep, a good producer's rep won't charge you anything up front for brokering the film, like representing it to sales agents or to, in some cases, U.S. distributors. But bad producer's rep will often quote something like $10,000 for that service, and don't take that. Just don't do it.
Don't do it.
Generally for strict brokering tasks, like I charge 10%. If I'm going to a sales agent, I charge 18% if I'm going directly to a buyer. And that's essentially it. I don't charge recoupable expenses. I don't charge anything up front for brokering tasks. There are other services that I offer, like packaging services if your film's in development and other sorts of things that I do charge up front for. But for brokering tasks, I don't, and a good producer's rep shouldn't. If you want anything outside of brokering tasks, festival planning, marketing services, at that point, they probably will charge you. And it can be either a flat fee or an hourly or a monthly, or there's a lot of different ways it can work out. But yeah.
What is an aggregator?
Okay. An aggregator is somebody who will take your film and put it on different platforms, generally in the US, sometimes worldwide. The most well-known example of an aggregator is Distributor. And all they do is help you format your film technically so that it can be accepted by TVOD platforms, that's for transactional video on demand, so that they can be accepted and ingested into those platforms and then made available for sale.
Okay.
And some aggregators will also represent you to places like Netflix and Hulu. More publicly accessible aggregators don't have a great track record at getting you on, though, because they just submit dozens, if not hundreds, of films to them a month. So they stop paying attention to those submissions. So that's one of the instances where I think going with a U.S. distributor or a sales agent acting as a U.S. distributor is a much better way to go than a publicly accessible aggregator.
Do you know how much they charge usually, or?
I haven't looked at distributors' rates too thoroughly recently, but I know that distributor will charge, but the last time I checked, and this may be out of date, it may have gone up or it may have gone down, so I don't know whether or not this is accurate. I think it's somewhere around $1,500 to $2,000 for iTunes alone. And if you want to get on additional platforms besides iTunes, you'll need to pay additional fees on top of that.
All right. Sometimes I get filmmakers asking me, hey, how can I get an investor? Like, what will be that process for somebody that it's almost, let's say that they finish production and they want to do now post-production?
Okay. That's easier to get an investor at that stage than it is when you're completely new. When it's an in-development project, I mean. At that stage, I would be looking into grants as well as tax incentives you're probably a little late for at that stage, but...
You can do it in New York City, actually.
You can for that stage?
Yes.
Okay. Then angel investment money is really hard to get into the independent film world, especially for equity, and it's very expensive money. You have to give up a lot of ownership of your film to do it, and it's also very high risk for the investor. So I generally advise thinking of equity as a second to last option for you. The last option would be gap debt. Gap debt is incredibly expensive, often 30 to 40% interest over 12 months, but the goal is to hold it for only about 6 months. But still, you're paying a pretty hefty premium on that money, and if you don't get your money back that quickly, it's gonna hurt you pretty bad. And it also really hurts the angel investors you had on earlier. So.
Okay, and how important do you think is the community for the filmmakers?
Vital.
Because I was looking at your articles, so that's why I'm asking you all these questions.
Yeah, I think community is vital for independent filmmakers. I think it's not just your filmmaking community, but it's also your the community that will eventually buy your film. You have to, if you're going to start a seed for people to buy your film, you have to get them interested in the film early and talk to them early, because if you just go in trying to sell them something when it's done or trying to ask for money via crowdfunding as a first post, it's not going to work too well. People do that in some of my Facebook groups fairly regularly, and I don't see them getting much of any traction. So I think community is I think especially with the way the market seems to be heading, community is going to be the biggest separator between successful filmmakers, financially successful filmmakers, and filmmakers who don't make money from their work.
So basically, you think that people should, go to the events, meet with another filmmakers, also with the community, if they can make screening of their own films. So then that way their audience can go like bigger and can also grow. And then maybe later on they can actually pay for whatever they're like screening, or let's say that they have like a feature film coming up, then those people are going to be able to or either donate money or just, go and watch your film. Stuff like that, right?
That's part of what I'm saying, but when you're building community, you do have to realize that community is a two-way street. You can't constantly be taking and taking and taking from the community and saying, support my film, support, work on my set. All of these different things, you also have to be giving to the community and helping make the community bigger and more vibrant. You have to be supplying some sort of value. A lot of the way I try to provide value to the film communities I'm a part of is to share specialized knowledge, because there's not a lot of reliable information about distribution or marketing or finance geared towards filmmakers that's available on the internet. And I write 1 to 2 blog posts a week just to share tips on this and help filmmakers grow their career and monetize their work. And all of that is an attempt to enrich the communities I'm a part of, as well as help to spread the brand of my company and my services. So,
okay, that's great.
Yeah.
Can you talk about marketing? Like, let's say that the movie is already like ready, and right now is like in the process of doing like the marketing round.
Okay. You mean fundraising for a marketing round, or specifically just marketing the film now that it's done?
Let's talk about first about fundraising, and then we'll talk about the other aspects.
So, if you've been participating in your community,
I'm sorry that I cut you because you have an article about Twitter and Facebook.
Yes.
So maybe you can
relate
it to
that. A lot of the article that I think you're referencing, a lot of it really is about engaging in your community and providing value first. These can be, again, you should be looking for some way that you can enrich through social media, not just try to monetize through social media. If all you do is post sales links to your movie, you're not going to be able to grow your brand that easily. If you start posting trailers, behind the scenes footage, and all of this other sorts of stuff, then you're in a much better position. But one important thing to realize here is that marketing is not something to think about after the film's done. Marketing is something to think about as soon as you've completed the first draft of the script, or even before then. Because you have to be thinking about engaging with your community, because your community is going to be the first people you market to. And if you engage with your community at an early stage, it's more likely that they'll become invested in your project and not only buy it, but tell their friends about it as the movie goes on. I can't tell the story I was about to tell because it's not public information yet.
Can you say something similar with other names? Or
So there was a film of mine that is about to go to theaters. Did a really great example of this, and they did some community screenings that just were a blowout. They weren't really. It wasn't about making money from them. But just they called on the community for help when they were making this project, and everybody in the small town that this film was shot in really rallied to help. And then they did a series of screenings in that small town, and the response was overwhelming. Just the amount of people that came out to support this film was huge. And I'm not allowed to say how much, but for one screen, in the tiny market that this film showed in, it was huge. And again, it was a private screening, so nobody will ever know because it was a series of private screenings. Because it hasn't had its theatrical premiere yet, but it will on the 27th, and it'll be here in New York. So,
Great.
yeah.
Let us know.
Will do. But the, so yeah, it's a...
So through engaging the community, you were able to just film over there and also show the movie over there, and you saw that the people enjoy it. People,
yeah, basically, people felt invested and involved in the film. And the fact that people were there for and the fact that people who actually had little parts in making this movie, just through helping out with locations, helping out on set and all of this other stuff, word spread about the movie. And because the guy was from this small town, there was a real sense of hometown pride and community pride for this being made there. And it's a really good movie. And I think the community was more than a little surprised at exactly how good the movie is, because this is this kid who grew up here. How good could it possibly be? But it's really
well
good.
Done.
Yes, it's
well
really
done.
well done. It's among the highest production quality films that have been submitted to me. It's really good. Yeah.
Wow. You talk about waterfall.
Yeah, a film distribution waterfall, payment waterfall. So, film distribution contracts are complicated, but one of the key parts of a contract is what we call the payment waterfall, which is how money flows from the distributor to the sales agent to the producer's rep, or just directly to the filmmaker. If you don't have a producer's rep, then it won't flow to a producer's rep for obvious reasons, but normally the producer's rep will essentially be in line with the filmmaker. But you can't have two people on the same line, so the producer's rep often just ends up slightly above because their cut is much smaller.
Okay.
So normally in a waterfall, the buyer or distributor will, if it's a revenue share deal, they'll take their cut first, then they'll deduct their fees to the sales agent. So their fees are the second item. Their third item is the sales agent commission. The fourth item is the sales agent recoupable expenses. I have seen it go the other way around, and I think it's more ethical for the expenses to be third item, but pretty much everybody does it as the fourth item, and you can't negotiate around that. I've tried. And then it goes to the producer's rep, and if there's no producer's rep, it goes to the production company. And that's just to get it to the production company. That's not counting the waterfall that happens to get to the actual producers. Normally, once you get to the producers and the production company, the first thing that pays out are recouping debts. The second is helping angel investors recoup, often plus 10 to 20%. And then the third is any crew deferrals, because deferral does not mean free. You do have to pay your crew. Normally, they end up lower than the investors, though. And then the fourth, whatever's remaining goes to the producer. But by the time you get down to like the ninth line item that I just mentioned, there's not much of anything back, even if the film does pretty well. So.
Wow. That's a lot.
Yeah. So it's dense. I do have an article on that. It's probably, that's one that's probably easier to read than it is to just hear in that. So.
No, I read it too.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So we're seeing more and more about like self-distribution, and like people are like saying, no, we don't want to. Some of them are saying, no, we don't want to do the distribution deal because you're giving me less money than I pay for the movie. How do you see that coming right now?
So I'm probably not going. Yeah.
And I'm seeing this on basically on the like startup.
Okay. On a
Yeah.
first-time filmmaker.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say something that's not going to be popular.
Okay,
But
that's fine.
if it's your first film
Mm-hmm.
and you've made it for under $200,000 and you don't have recognizable name talent in it, you're probably not getting a minimum guarantee at all. You probably won't get anything up front. It's not a question of what you get up front. It's a question of if you get anything. If you do get anything, it probably won't cover your budget. And if you don't have somebody helping you negotiate, like a good lawyer or a producer's rep, you will not be, there's a good chance you won't see anything from it ever. And that's not the way it should be.
But that's what it is.
Yeah, there are a lot of not so honest actors in this space. And the reason you work with a producer's rep or a connected entertainment attorney is to help you avoid those not honest actors, the ones who don't pay. Now, I don't mean to toot my own horn too much and talk too much about my own services, but it is probably the most valuable thing I do. However, you can get almost as good an answer from this. You can't get the better negotiation points, but you can get an answer as to whether or not it's likely the sales agent will pay you if you just call 3 of their former clients. And I recommend you do that for producers reps too. You should always call 3 of their former clients to see if they live up to their expectations. Always, 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 always. I include myself in that. You should call some of my previous clients if you want to work with me. But that wasn't the answer to your question. But regarding distribution, self-distribution, you have to be really careful about it because most aggregators you can approach won't help you market the film. And they'll make it available for distribution, but if you're not marketing it, you're not going to sell anything.
But you can get in contact with a marketing company, and they could do the marketing of the movie, right?
They're pretty expensive, though.
They're expensive.
And honestly, I think the best place to spend money for marketing your film is publicity.
Yeah.
And if you do anything, hire a publicist. A lot of times, a sales agent will do that for you.
Okay.
And distributors in their own territories will also do that for you. So that's one of the biggest things here is that if you're going to have to raise money again after the film's done if you want to market it yourself, whereas if you work with a sales agent or distributor, they'll foot the bill for a lot of those expenses. Sure, they take some of the gains from it for that, but they are investing in your movie. But yeah, the big thing you have to weigh is how you're going to get to your end consumer. If you've been like a friend of mine who runs the podcast Indie Film Hustle, Alex Ferrari, self-distributed his film, but he has a giant community to market to, and a lot of people just bought that movie, myself included, just because Alex made it. And he's a great example of what you can do with self-distribution. But if you don't have that large network you can sell to.
So you do need to have some money, planning, and research how you talk about. You should do the homework.
Exactly.
And
yeah, and you have to have a market base to sell to if you're going to self-distribute. It's like crowdfunding in a way. People aren't just going to magically give you money, and people aren't just magically going to buy your film. You have to tell them about it, and you have to get them interested in it. And that requires, it's going to be a lot of your time if you want to market it yourself. And the trade-off for spending time marketing this movie is that it'll be a longer time before you can make your next one. So that's why I still prefer the older sales agency model.
I was reading that it was around 6 to 8 months that you can actually be working.
Oh yeah.
So it's a lot of time.
Yeah.
Like you said before, it will take a lot of time to go to the next one. Yeah, definitely.
6 to 8 months actually seems a little on the short end to me. But the bulk of it will be done, but you won't be. But you'll have it. The bulk of the marketing for the movie will be done after 6 to 8 months. But you'll still have it as a part-time job for another year and a half after that. Just look, my film's done. My film's done with this window. Now we're available on Amazon. Or have you checked out my film on Amazon yet? I mean, they'll get your followers will get a lot of those tweets. But the so yeah, I think that is the biggest thing for me about whether or not to self-distribute. And I think in the majority of cases, filmmakers are better off, at very least, working with team members that will help them distribute and market, as opposed to just doing it all themselves. And I think the line between the people who will, at least right now, the line between the people who will help you market your film and help get it aggregated in a cost-efficient way, and all of these other things, the best partners that are readily accessible are producers, reps, and sales agents right now. That may be completely different in 2 years, but there might be new people who are more specialized in marketing and aggregation at a lower cost that it makes more sense for filmmakers to do it themselves, but
you still need people to help you.
You still need people. You'll need to be involved, but you do need people to help you. You need people who live and breathe marketing, because it's an entirely different skill set than making films. And I think a lot of people hone the craft of making a good film for decades, and they don't want to have to learn to be an expert marketer on top of that. So that's my 2 cents anyway.
We can go over the different pages, websites that you have.
Okay.
So maybe people can know more about you.
Guerrilla Rep.
Guerrilla Rep. You want to talk about that?
Yeah. The Guerrilla Rep is the homepage for my, mainly for my books and consulting service, as well as representation service. Everything I do as a producer's rep runs through theguerrillarep.com. If you wanted to submit your project to me, you can go to theguerrillarep.com/submit, and it'll take you to a form that'll let you put in all the information I need to assess a project, and it helps me get back more quickly than I would otherwise. Although I've been a little lax on it lately because the last couple of weeks have been crazy busy. So then, in case anybody's watching, you can also go to theguerrillarep.com/blog, and I have around 40 or so, 45 blogs on film distribution and marketing that you could just read for free.
And they're very good.
Oh, thank you.
I've read some of it.
It's a dense topic, and there's a lot of stuff to write about. My goal is to write 50 blogs for that blog this year, and another 50 for the Production Next blog. So I'm on track so far, so that's not bad.
Do you want to talk about Production Next?
Yeah, I'd love to. Production, so about half of my time is devoted to everything I've talked about so far. And the other half of my time is as the chief marketing officer for a startup called Production Next. And Production Next is a cloud-based project management platform for independent film. And it is all about helping filmmakers make films in a more efficient way. It does everything from budgeting, scheduling, shot listing, call sheet generation, and a bunch of stuff, and it really takes advantage of the internet as a tool. Everything is completely connected. As soon as you update one thing, it updates across the entire site. You can collaborate with other filmmakers on there and give them different permission sets that let them see what they need to see and nothing more. Like the director of photography can modify and all of the shot lists, all of the storyboards, all of the equipment lists, but they can't even see the budget. And the line producer can see the shot lists to help advise on schedule, see a lot of other of the creative documents, but they can't change those, and they have full reign on the budget. And we also have financing tools, by which I mean tools to help you track your financial mix. They don't actually help you connect to money at this point. I feel I need to clarify that because we get at least one email a day about that.
I was going to ask you. That's why I asked you about the investors.
So,
because I went to the page.
So it's not about helping you. There is one really cool tool that Production Next will help you do once you have an investor, which is, we call it our executive dashboard. And it gives real-time insights to what's going on in the project, like what shoots are upcoming, if there are any critical or important tasks that are upcoming in the next couple days or overdue, where you are in regards to your budget. Are you matching your projections, or are you over them, are you under them? And a bunch of other really top-level insights at a glance to the executive producer. And you don't have to work to update these. Just by using the tools as you would normally use them, they're automatically updated, keeping your executive producer up to date on what's going on without you having to take that weekly call that you've got a lot of stuff you've got to do anyway, but you do have to keep your executive happy, because otherwise you're not going to be happy for long. So I think, so that's probably one of my favorite tools. That tool is also in use at film schools right now. Film students are adding their, so we're in about 4 film schools. And
which one, if you want to mention?
I don't know if I'm allowed to say.
It's okay.
But some in San Francisco, one in Georgia. I can't say the school name, but I can say where they are. We're in 2 in San Francisco, 1 in Georgia, and 1 in Seattle.
And this is free, or
it's very low. It's very low cost, and the only time you end up paying is if you want to create and own your own projects. It's free to join someone else's project. And it's also free to use our community features and set up your company, which is where you keep your real-world assets, like all of your equipment, props, wardrobe, and all of that. And then once they're set up, you can plug them directly into your projects once you start making them. So it is $99.95 for a full year of access.
Affordable.
And we have some, and we'll create a page for you guys that if you go through your page, you'll actually get 15 months instead of 12 months. So
wow, that's nice. Thank you.
But so yeah, it's a really good. Well, I'm biased, but it's part of the reason I came on to this company when I did is that I've really wanted better tools like this, and I realized that not a lot of people were going to be able to make better tools than I could help design, because right now people have been trying, and I don't think it's entirely my ideas. I think it's a lot of this is just common sense stuff that nobody else seems to be doing.
And I think what I like about it, when I was on the internet, it was that, it has everything. So every department, so it's actually help you, how you mentioned, to have everything together, which is important in order to move forward the production.
Filmmaking is collaborative, and we think your tool sets should be too. And it doesn't make sense for the director of photography to go off and make a shot list on paper and then have to share it 7 ways, and if it changes, everything else changes, and it leads to a lot of, there would be a technological way I would say it that would sound really pretentious and boring, but it leads to a lot of inefficiencies, and I could have made that worse.
So basically, with this tool, everything is faster. Even let's say that I'm working here and maybe I'm starting a new project. In 2 months or 3 months, I actually have access, and I stay together and in contact, which is better than have a tons of emails saying like, hey, this is my shot list, or this is what I need for the equipment, or this is what I need for locations.
Exactly.
So I think it's amazing just because of that, because it's shareable. everyone can, can use it and can log in,
Yeah.
basically. I
That-
think it's amazing.
Thank you. We've worked really hard on it for a while. One of the biggest things that's different about it is since you can set up things like equipment and locations. If this network were on Production Next, then you could actually manage parts of your studio rental system through us and keeping everything on set, on track, and making sure that your studios are never meant to be in two places. Like, you don't have double bookings or anything like that. We actually have technology that automatically separates those.
Wow,
So,
that's great.
and it can be, so that's kind of where we are, and we can talk after if that's interesting to you. But yeah.
Sure. I think that's
Yeah.
great. I think you have another website too, right?
I do, but I'm not doing a lot with it right now.
But you still have articles there, right?
Yeah, there's a chance that those might end up on being migrated to my personal blog by the end
Okay.
of the year. But as of right now, that site is producerfoundry.com, and it's got probably the most popular article there is the 12 slides you need in your indie film investment deck. And Producer Foundry was a venture I did with a couple of other people, Alex, Evan, and Randy, and Gary, to make a business school for independent film. Because
okay.
film school doesn't teach business.
Anything. Yeah,
So,
I mean,
yeah.
they do teach something, but don't get me
Yeah.
wrong. But the business aspect is like none.
Yeah, so we were
Yeah.
looking at being essentially a kind of a content supplier for film schools to use, as well as just an organization of our own where if you weren't in film school, you didn't have to be in film school to use our content, but we also had plans to help film schools with video content and other stuff that would be useful to teach business. And also, because I think part of the problem is a lot of the film school instructors don't always understand business. So that's why there's not a lot of business being taught there. So I think if you actually want more business to be taught, you have to educate the educators.
Yeah.
So,
And I thank you because, I mean, those articles are like, well written, and it's the way that you write it, it's easy to understand. And there's not a lot of things out there that we can actually learn about distribution.
thank you,
Like,
yeah.
It's not that easy. And even if you don't live in LA, that, there's so much access there to go to different events. Over here it's a little bit harder. Of course, there are people that are trying to change all of that. But with your articles, people can actually have an understanding. And then maybe that can lead to something else on your book or somebody else's book, and things like that, which I think for me, because I'm a filmmaker, but I think that all the filmmakers that I know, it's very hard for them separate the creative aspect from the business aspect. And I think it's important to know both, because that's the way you can actually later on live from there.
Yeah.
And if you don't want to be involved, at least, as a filmmaker, you get a team together and just move forward. Also, your product at the end, because at the end is a product, So, I don't know if you want to say anything else. Maybe an advice for somebody that wants to be like you in the future.
So I'll go, before I get to your to that question, I will say one thing about the part of the reason that I write as much as I do and I give away as much as I do. I think I've done a lot of research into this. I've worked with angel groups.
Okay.
I've kind of started an angel group. We'll see how long that lasts, but the biggest issue with starting angel groups for film and media is that film and media aren't sustainable asset classes. They're not asset classes at all, really. There's not enough information for them to be asset classes. And I think a big part of the reason that they're not sustainable investments is filmmakers don't understand business, and there's no place to teach it. So if I can at least make a dent in that knowledge and have people and write blogs that help filmmakers understand these various business aspects, then I think that that helps independent film and media become a more sustainable asset class. It's not going to get there overnight, and I can't, and just my blogs aren't going to do it on their own. But I think it's one piece that can hopefully help others to get the other pieces that need to be made to make independent film a more sustainable investment. It's never going to get every film financed. Right now, I did a lot of research with Stage 32, IndieWire, and Fandor. And you can find most of the results of that research on the Production Next blog. But one of the things we found is that there's, I believe, I didn't look at the research this morning, so I might be a little off, but I think there's between 12 and 15,000 films produced every year.
Yeah, I read that one.
And that's a lot. And I don't know how likely it is that we're going to be able to monetize all of those films. And if you don't have a good path to monetization, you're not going to be able to get investment, because that's not a sustainable investment. So I don't think that just educating filmmakers to be better about business is going to fix the biggest issue, which is the huge supply of films being made every year that greatly outstrips the demand for film to consume.
Okay.
But hopefully you can address parts of it and make the problem more manageable.
So Ben, thank you so much for making it happen today and be able to share what you know with my community, which is the Latino community, and beyond happy. Thank you so much, and it's so valuable that you actually sharing with other communities, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
And do you want to last word of how people can contact you?
Yeah, the best way to find me is either on Facebook at facebook.com/theguerrillarep or facebook.com/productionnext, or my website, which is theguerrillarep.com. That's 2 R's and 2 L's.
Okay.
Excuse me. Sorry, I ate something on break.
No worries.
And then the other place I'd say is, if you're curious about Production Next, check out productionnext.com/Latino Film Market, and you'll find out more information and be able to sign up with a special code that'll get you 3 extra months when you subscribe to the full year.
Nice.
So yeah.
Thank you so much. And also people can find you on LinkedIn, right?
Yes, they can find me on LinkedIn. Just search for Ben Yennie, and you should see my face. I don't think there are too many of us there. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Give me your hand.
Thank you.
Thank you. And see you guys soon. Hasta la próxima.